During a class I took in seminary, a class on pastoral care, the instructor offered us a tip not grounded in academic research necessarily, but born out of experience. She said it was a good idea to pay special attention to what someone says to you as they are heading out of your office at the end of a visit. That time when they stop in your doorway and say, "Oh, wait, there's one more thing." Even if a long conversation has preceded that statement, that last thing is probably what is most on their heart. I think of today's gospel reading, which comes at the very end of the Gospel of John, as the author's doorway moment. 2 weeks ago, when we heard about Jesus' appearance to the disciples in the upper room and his interaction with Thomas, it seemed like John was winding up his story. The very last line in chapter 20 says, "Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God." That sure sounds like a writer coming in for a landing. But today we get chapter 21. Oh, wait, there's one more thing. To be sure, the scene that plays out in chapter 21 isn't an unfamiliar one. Jesus isn't doing or saying anything that he hasn't done or said before. Instead, I hear what's said and described in this chapter like a theological coda. A coda, my online dictionary tells me, is in musical composition a concluding section that is based on extensions or re-elaborations of thematic material previously heard. Jesus is singing to his followers what might be considered a familiar tune, but he wants to sing it one more time, perhaps to make sure that they've really heard him. The first tune or theme to notice is about community. When Simon Peter says to his friends that he's going to go fishing, they chime in that they'll go with him. Are they just joining in because they have nothing better to do? Or have they internalized the lessons from Jesus about how it's better to go into the world together? That we do best when we join forces, share our gifts, and work together as a body. The second theme to notice is about abundance. After some initial disappointing fishing results, Jesus, whom the disciples don't recognize right off, he advises them to cast their nets from the other side of the boat, and then they catch almost more fish than their nets can hold. The over-the-top abundance of their haul is reminiscent of Jesus' first miracle in John's Gospel during the wedding at Cana, when he transforms hundreds of gallons of water into high-quality wine. It is in the midst of a display of generosity and abundance that the disciples are finally able to see Jesus for who he is. A third theme is that Jesus comes to the disciples, serves them, offering real things: a charcoal fire on the beach, bread, roasted fish. Jesus operates in tangibles, not so much in concepts. He is God incarnated into flesh and blood, living with, seeing, and meeting the real needs of actual people. Yet another theme is forgiveness. Although this scene on the beach is the third appearance of Jesus to his disciples since his trial and death and resurrection, it's the first time that Jesus and Peter have had an exchange since Peter denied knowing Jesus on the night he was arrested. Jesus who? I don't know him. Nope, not me. 3 times Peter claimed not to have any connection with Jesus. 3 times he threw his friend under the bus. But this day, over breakfast, Jesus gives Peter an opportunity to make a threefold declaration of love, undoing his previous 3 betrayals. Declarations alone, though, don't go far enough. Jesus pushes past the conceptual declaration to force the question, so what does love look like? If you really love me, Peter, then go and do. Active verbs: feed, care for, tend my sheep, the 99 and the 1. Jesus doesn't lay out all the details for Peter, doesn't guarantee success, whatever success means, doesn't say that the feeding and caring and tending is going to be easy or come without cost. He just says, Peter, go do the next right thing, and then the next right thing after that. During my travels a couple of weeks ago, on one of my flights, I watched a documentary about the life and work of Jose Andres, the world-famous chef who operates several award-winning restaurants and who is also the founder of the emergency food relief operation, World Central Kitchen. World Central Kitchen makes its way into areas impacted by natural disasters like hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires. They also go into war zones. They are not there to take sides in a conflict. They are there to feed and care for and tend to the needs of hungry people, regardless of their political affiliation or ideology. If you love me, feed my sheep, all of them. Jose Andres tells the story of how his idea for World Central Kitchen came about. He noticed that across the street from his first restaurant in Washington, D.C., was a museum located in the building which housed the Missing Soldiers Office during the Civil War, an organization started and run by Clara Barton to be an informational clearinghouse for those searching for relatives and friends lost in the war. Barton, who also served as a field nurse in the battlefields of the Civil War, would go on to found what would become the American Red Cross. Andres was impressed by Barton's persistence in making a difference. She's quoted as saying, "You must never think of anything except the need and how to meet it." And so Jose Andres thought about what it is that he knew how to do and how he could use his knowledge and skills to meet a need. He talked about watching the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and the uncoordinated patchwork of efforts to supply people displaced from their homes with food and water. In his autobiography, Andres writes that, "I couldn't understand why there wasn't a big organization of chefs to do this work. When there's a fire, you send firefighters. When there's an earthquake, you send search and rescue teams. When there's an explosion, you send doctors and nurses. So when there are hungry people, why wouldn't you send chefs? They are the best, most prepared experts to feed people in an emergency. We know kitchens, we know food suppliers, we know one another. We know how to cook and feed large numbers of people." And so the idea of World Central Kitchen began to take shape. But before World Central Kitchen became what it is today, in 2024, they served over 109 million meals. Before that, there were false starts and missteps. Moving from concept to reality wasn't so easy as Andres might have imagined. He tells about his first venture into emergency food relief when he visited Haiti in 2010 after the huge earthquake there. He went, he says, primarily to learn and to help, but when he had a chance to start cooking, he did. At a refugee settlement, Andres jumped right into the thick of things, setting out to make a dish of black beans and rice, comfort food, as he describes it. Some women from the settlement helped him do prep work, peeling and chopping things, but he noticed some odd looks coming his way from the women. There was a language barrier, but eventually Andres figured out that he wasn't making beans the way that the Haitians liked to eat their beans. At first, he says, he was a little upset, a little miffed. I'm Jose Andres. I'm a famous chef. I own restaurants. I have TV shows. He got over himself, though, and invited the women to show him how they liked to make the dish. It was from this experience that World Central Kitchen set listening as one of its core values. In times of great stress and loss and upheaval, making people the dishes they know and connect with is an act of hospitality, dignity, and love. If you love me, feed my sheep, but pay attention to what the sheep most want and need. A little more than a year ago, 7 of World Central Kitchen's workers were killed in a military attack while they were transporting food into Gaza. In the documentary, Chef Andres mused about the divisiveness and polarization in the world, about the weaponization of food and humanitarian aid, and what drives him to continue this relief work, even in dangerous areas. He understands the risks, acknowledges the difficulties. Still, he pushes on to do the next right thing. Love trumps hate, he says, but you have to work hard for love. Being a Christian for me is not primarily about doctrines or beliefs or concepts. It's not about reciting creeds or being able to cite chapter and verse or making arguments about how the scriptures should be interpreted to weigh in on this or that 21st century social or political issue which wasn't even on the radar of Middle Eastern folks in the first century. Christianity to me is not about adhering to what some folks like to call orthodoxy, but which is in reality simply a pious cover to justify misogyny, homophobia, xenophobia, targeted violence, and capitalist exploitation. For me, the heart of the Christian faith is found in what Jesus says as he stands at the threshold, the doorway of the world, as he's about to turn his mission and ministry over to the disciples and all of us who've come after them. Do you love me? Jesus asks. You do? That's great. Then go and do. Feed and care for and tend. Do the next right thing that you can do. Then do it again. Amen.